Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps lots. And also keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we have to market close on Tuesday, April 12th. I wanted to take a look at the overall market today and get a sense of whether or not we're still sort of in crash is looming territory, or if we're in sort of recovery bounce mode. What are sort of the indications that we're in any of those places and why? So the way I'm going to structure the video is I'm going to start off on the weekly to give a really expansive view and just sort of some broad strokes on where I think SPY, QQQ, IWM, and UVXY are. And then we're going to zoom in a couple of levels to get a little bit more granularity and talk a little bit more specific targets. So on the weekly with SPY here, you can see these are previous levels that we had put in. So this long up channel that had been in for quite some time got disrupted this year, as you know, and these purple zones were the zones I said likely to bounce, and 414, this level, was the level that I saw below that if it couldn't hold these bounce zones, and then 400 basically below that if it couldn't hold. Luckily, so far it's been able to hold off of 414 at least, and has recovered nicely above this higher bounce zone. We see it continues though to push off of this red resistance level that we had put in. So it's respecting the levels pretty well. We'll get into a little bit more granularity in a minute. We'll circle back. In the meantime, QQQ, this one I still have drawn in here, this long-term up channel that had been in, save for the crash here, and resumed the motion, and then again also recently disrupted. And as you can see, a very similar looking reaction, but everything is a bit more sort of enlarged, if you will. Everything is similar to SPY. Like if you look at these two structures of where that break came, very similar in shape, but QQQ sort of amplified, the losses and the gains, sort of the swings have just been much bigger. Now IWM is different altogether, right? This had this like year-long range that it had put in, and that's where the disruption came on IWM, was a break below that year-long range that it had put in after having had, since March of 2020, this pretty consistent uptrend with some brief consolidation here and here. But otherwise, now it's sort of broke down, and to me, again, we'll get deeper into this in a minute. To me, IWM looks the most sort of rickety. It looks to me the most like this could very easily be an upside down pole and a bear flag. So that to me looks the most, I don't want to say top heavy because it's not sort of accurate of what you're looking at, but it feels the most rickety to me. I'll put it that way. IWM is a bit hard to look at on the weekly, and there's a ton of levels in here. We'll clean this up a bit when we get into it, but you do see it sort of dip back down into some recent lows, but it's putting in some interesting motions here that we'll zoom in on in a moment. So let's flip over to the 1 year. Start back with SPY, and we'll see exactly on the daily candlestick chart more clearly where these bounce zones have been happening. So if we zoom in here on the last few weeks, we see this like degrading of price action down through these levels pretty significantly, and then it was able to hold itself off of closing below this 414, and then retested it twice here, and then was able to make a higher high, right? You see this swing high here, this swing high here, all the way back up at 462. Nothing to sneeze at for sure, but now it's retracing back toward this bounce zone that I have starting about 436. So it's still sort of perched a bit above that at the moment, but mostly looking like it's wanting to pull back into that's the question. Into what? Into this 436, which is the range that it's in right now, and then show some bounce. Will it stretch through the bottom portion of that down to 433? So it's just a $3 range. So it's nothing tremendous, but 436 to 433 is the range that I'd be looking at for the first potential bounce. If it can't hold that, you might, strong possibility you're looking at like 427 down to 422, and again, if not, 414. Like, these levels look to me like they are holding pretty well. You see when it was batting around here, it was batting around these bounce zones, right? And this bounce zone here, very clearly, as it fell through, it started treating the top of this range as resistance. So to me, these are holding up quite well, and that's what I'd look for. It still needs to break and hold a retest above, say, 456. To my mind, to really show that it's in the mood for a recovery. Because what happened here, you see it broke through that level ever so briefly, and then it fell down toward it, fell down through it, tried to reclaim it, and that's where it lost all of its muster. And so that's really the question, right? If it comes up again, can it come down to retest and at least hold, or can it come down to retest and bounce? And that would be, to me, that would be the real move. So that's the question in my mind on SPY. QQQ, you see a pretty clear sort of consistent, I don't even want to say a double top here, but just sort of like a consistent top, right? It's topped out here a bunch of times, right? It came down through here and fell pretty significantly just straight through that level. So it wasn't showing a lot of sort of supportive strength at that moment, but then it really stepped its game up. This range, this red range I'm talking about, really stepped up its game when it turned into resistance, right? So you have 1, 2, you could even say that there's 4 candlesticks here, and then at this point it was really battling with this for, again, you could say 5 candlesticks there. So this could be putting in like 9-ish candlesticks recently, where it's just been unable to get and stay through this level at like 370. Even stretching down to, the start of the battle around 365. So 365 to 370 really proving to be a tough one. Now QQQ, you see, different from the zoom in that we did here on SPY, so I wanted to zoom in a little bit, because even though they look pretty similar, like I said, the QQQ's moves have just been outsized compared to SPY. And so you see here, QQQ is sitting in a dip, like a potential bounce zone, purple zones, but it's in the lower bounce zone, right? So it's already down to level 2, whereas SPY for the moment is at least still testing this upper bounce zone, and it has a full one below it. Now moving on to IWM, this, like I said, to me is the most precarious, because we do have this motion coming up here recently, right, and some slightly higher highs coming in also, but I don't see anything that's sort of proving out a channel type trajectory that's looking like it's going to play out in a strong way. Because to me, I would want to see a channel forming above this 200 level. But what we see is these consistent dips still like well into the 190s. It's not like it, slips into 199 or even 198 here and there. It's coming down to the mid 190s still, even though it's making, its higher highs. And I just think that given this previous long-standing range that it was in, the loss of that, and then just what it looks like to me on that weekly chart especially is potential for this to fall quite a bit more. That said, this feels like the most heavily impacted at the moment, and it may have the best opportunity for recovery, but sort of what I'm talking about or looking at is what it looks like may come as sort of the next move, right? Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even this week, but I would say, like, when we look back at it and say, okay, what was the next big swing? To me, this looks like, maybe it comes up and rejects again off of 201. I guess maybe a simplistic way to think about it, and what I'm seeing here is I would be very cautious if the next swing up can't break like 213. To me, that's potentially going to be a real problem, right? Because you do see this sort of like channeling up, and you do see some higher highs, but you also see like this candle coming in here, and then this big drop. So now the question becomes, big problem if you can't get above 213, in my opinion. Really big problem if you can't get above 210. Because that means that we're coming in, and who knows if it's even going to break through this, 201.61 and 204.78. I don't know, but these are the things. You don't put these, price targets on here because they're crystal balls. You put them on here just because it's, to me, it's the place where you want to see what it does. Okay, when it gets there, what does it do? That's like a critical juncture for it. And so that's what I'm looking at. And I could be wrong. And for all of the long positions that I hold, I certainly hope that I'm wrong, that IWM isn't super rickety and looking like it wants to start putting in maybe a series of lower highs, right? Like you see the big potential beginning of here. But that's really not strong confirmation. That's just a couple, maybe 3 candlesticks. And I wouldn't, take that. I would take it with a big grain of salt, I guess is a better way to put it at the moment. But any sort of, confirmation of this motion here, I would just get pretty cautious on. UVXY, on the other hand, certainly starting to come up. We see it's, previously was struggling like in this $20 range. Now it's coming in as struggling around this $14, $15 range. Some pretty big movements yesterday and today, though. Today it looks like a bigger movement than it actually was, but quite a bit of range today. But this motion, this after it dipped down below 12, it's looking like it wants to continue a motion up. Any break over 15, a break and a hold, I should say, over 15, right? It could sort of like break above 15 and then kind of wick off of it or not really show any strength above it. But any strength shown over 15, obviously you're going to be seeing and feeling the inverse of that in the other 3 indices that we just looked at, or the other 3 ETFs that we just looked at. So it'll be an obvious play there, but however you want to pay attention to these to make it make sense to you the best, or to confirm any sort of movement in these ETFs versus, what may be happening with VIX or UVXY, which tracks that. This is me trying to like dance around getting into these lengthy explanations of the ETFs versus the indices they track, but I'm sure you know of that, or you can Google and there's good stuff out there about it. But in any case, I just like I said, I'd be very cautious if IWM can't break above this what did I say? Here it is, 210 level, 213 level. Same things I said, QQQ. I'd be cautious to see what it does. Like it's on the lower of these bounce zones, right? And then SPY, similarly, next time we make an attempt at this red area, you see it hasn't been able to hold the retest, right? It's broken through, but it hasn't been able to hold the retest. So just as I'm saying, I'd be cautiously watching what it does in those instances. Similarly with UVXY, I would be watching if it breaks and holds above 15, there's a good chance that, these will be falling. I don't know about plummeting, but they'll be falling. And VIX to me at that point, or UVXY at that point, to me, over 15 looks like it has a lot of potential room to run. It might get a lot of strength through that area. If UVXY is able to get through 15, hold it, or go through it just with sheer strength, right? And just kind of plow forward. So that to me could be sort of like a be cautious that the levee doesn't break kind of moments. I'm trying to not be like too hyperbolic here, right? Because I'm mostly long, obviously. Like my major positions are long, and so I'm not wanting a crash. But I've just sort of been, watching these and eyeballing them, and things are coming to interesting junctures where UVXY coming to that important 15 level, and I see IWM putting in these lower highs that we talked about, even though it looks like it's potentially channeling up a little bit, and QQQ testing this lower bounce zone, and SPY, like I said, failing that initial retest, of this red area. So I just thought I'd pop in and say, there's these things that make this look kind of, not the strongest situation at the moment, to my mind, but we'll see how it plays out. Things could really look differently in a week or in a month or in 3 months or what have you. But we'll keep keep our eyes peeled and sort of put in levels and talk about them as it makes sense. All right, folks, I hope that your trading week is off to a good start. And as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.